Hello and welcome to an episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Today is Friday, January 27th. Hope everybody's having a good day so far. It is, in fact, Friday, January 27th here today. We have hit the end of the week, and we got a very exciting weekend coming up full of sports, baseball, basketball, hockey, college basketball, no baseball just yet. We're getting closer, just a little over 20 days until spring training, and you've obviously got the two conference championship games this weekend, the NFC championship game and the AFC championship game. Eagles, Niners, Bengals, Chiefs, two big games. Looking forward to it, fired up, and should be a very, very exciting weekend as we close out really the NFL, playoffs before the Super Bowl, obviously, which is kind of its own big event. But this is for the right to go to the Super Bowl for the NFC and the AFC championship games down in Philly with the first game on Saturday or Sunday, and then after that you'll be in Kansas City. Arrowhead will be the Chiefs and the Bengals. So looking forward to it. Two excellent games, four very good teams. Two tough games to pick, really, because both teams you could see winning in each game. Both teams obviously have got their strengths and weaknesses. It should be a lot of fun. Patrick Mahomes, is he ready to go? All questions that are being asked right now, and we will get those answers on Sunday when everything is all set and done, and when the AFC and NFC championship games are over, and two teams are on their way to Super Bowl 57 in Arizona. So, with all that being said, we're going to get into it today here. We got the NFL game picks. I'll get you ready for it all. We'll get you my game picks, get you ready for both the games this weekend. And then it's going to be quick, not going to, I'll go into depth, detail, but with only two games, I'm not going to spend, a half an hour on two games. Just won't, need to go that much. So I'm going to have kind of two other topics after that. Talk a little bit about the Jets hiring Nathaniel Hackett. They have found their offensive coordinator. Get into him, get into Rodgers, get into the Jets quarterback situation, as the Jets have officially checked off the first big box of their 2023 offseason. We went into the offseason with two questions: offensive coordinator and the quarterback. We got the offensive coordinator figured out. They hired Nathaniel Hackett. Now we need to get the quarterback figured out. We'll get into that here. We'll get into that here coming up, and then we'll get to Frank Reich. Carolina Panthers have found their head coach. They hire Frank Reich, former Colts coach, and he will get the job down in Carolina. And I'm going to tell you why I think there was a big name that has been left out of this conversation, and that is Steve Wilks. Why he deserved the job, and why this isn't so much a bad hire for the Panthers, but it's more of a poor job letting go Steve Wilks, who did everything he was asked for and got the Panthers back in the playoff contention after they were an absolute disaster under Matt Rule. So we'll get into the Panthers, get into the confusing situation down in Carolina, and what Frank Reich brings to the table. For them, both the basketball teams got the nights off. Nets, two back-to-back tough losses. Tough loss in Philly, not much defense in either game. Two tough losses. They'll look to bounce back tomorrow against the Knicks. And the Rangers and the Islanders are both home tonight. Rangers will host Vegas, and the Islanders will host the Red Wings at UBS Arena. And the Yankees will be at the Garden tonight, or the Rangers will be at the Garden tonight against Vegas. So, with all that being said, this is the Bubbs on Sports podcast, and let's get right into it. So we're going to start things off today with my NFL game picks here. Just getting you ready here, obviously. Overall in the season, 179 and 102. Last week, I went 3-1. So total this postseason, I am 9-1 on my picks. Went 6-0 wild card weekend, 3-1 last weekend. So 9-1 overall in the postseason, and has gotten my record to 179 and 102. 3 games left. I would assume I get over 180 correct picks on the year. I have to get one of the next 3 games correct. I have to predict, obviously, either the championship games this weekend or the Super Bowl, which, by the way, I have not gotten the Super Bowl correct. I have not picked the Super Bowl correct in 2 years. I picked the Chiefs over the Buccaneers the COVID year, and then last year I took the Bengals over the Rams, and that obviously wasn't right. So it's been a little bit. The last time I picked it correct was the Chiefs over the Niners prior to COVID hitting it. It was the 2020 Super Bowl. 2021, the Bucs won. I picked the Chiefs. Last year I took the Bengals. The Rams won. So this year, hopefully, I correctly picked the Super Bowl winner. This season, we'll see how it all plays out after these weekend games go. But let's get into it here. So we're going to start off first game. of 2 is the Eagles and the Niners. This comes on Sunday, 3 Eastern on Fox. Eagles come into this game 2.5-point favorites. The over-under is set at 46. Eagles fresh off of their win against the Giants. They got the first-round bye. Niners path to the NFC Championship game. They took care of business against Seattle in the wild card round. And then last weekend, they took care of business of the Dallas Cowboys as they fall yet again another year short of a Super Bowl. And the Niners find themselves in the NFC Championship game led by Brock Purdy. And look, we saw it last weekend. I mean, we were all watching that Giants game. We were all seeing that, the New York sports area, the media, the radio shows, everyone was talking about it. The Eagles destroyed the Giants last weekend. And we went into this postseason with the Philadelphia Eagles. We were kind of concerned. We were a little worried with their health. What is Jalen Hurts? Is he healthy? Is he ready to go? How's their defense going to be up against some of these better offenses? Are they still going to be able to generate the pressure that they were able to get in the regular season where they led the league in sacks? I think it's 75 sacks as a team. Are they still going to be able to generate that pressure in the playoffs? Health was a big issue with the Eagles going into the postseason. And last weekend, with a lot of questions, and part of it is the media when you have a bye week and you're trying to create storylines without any news, without any games, the media will sometimes try and push a narrative that a team is either struggling or that something's going on in the locker room. And I felt you kind of got that sense with the Eagles where you kind of went into last weekend against the Giants and you're like, is this Eagles team really what they thought they were? Because all week long you heard questions around Jalen Hurts. Are they going to be healthy? Are the Giants going to be able to contain him? The last game against the Giants, the last game against the Giants backups, they struggled. And all those storylines were able to marinate a little bit through Wild Card Weekend because they got the bye week. And it's almost like none of them were really that true anyway because they came out and they ran all over the New York Giants and they got the win 38-7. They dominated the run game and they played well in front of their home crowd. That stadium was roaring. The Eagles are an amazing team. And the Niners are going to have to come out in this game, and they're first of all going to have to get some pressure on Jalen Hurts. They're also going to have to find a way to stop this run because last week the New York Giants did not have any chance in this game because they couldn't stop the run. The Eagles just ran. There was a drive where the Eagles ran it like 6 times in a row, and they were just running up and down the field. And the Giants had no answers. So up front, Armstead, Bosa, guys like that, not only are going to have to get pressure on Jalen Hurts, you're also going to have to, make sure that your corners are up and locking down their receivers. You're going to have to stop this run game, led by Miles Sanders, who had a massive week last week. Boston Scott as well, who gets involved, although he always scores touchdowns against the Giants. I don't know if he'll have as big of a game against the Niners, but it starts with that. You got to find this run. If the Eagles run like they did against the Giants, they're going to win the Super Bowl. Nobody's going to stop them. Niners won't. If the Niners can't stop them, they're obviously out of it. And I don't think the Bengals and Chiefs will be able to stop them too. The recipe to stopping the Eagles is you got to stop the run. And as for the Niners, look, it's a hostile environment. You're going into a road game, warm weather team into cold weather environment. So you do have a little bit of concern there, but let's be honest here. I'm not overly concerned about that. We said the same thing last year. Shanahan, this Niners team has experience. They went into Lambeau last season and beat the Packers in January. I'm not concerned about them going into Lincoln Financial and the weather being a factor. Now, if it was snowing, maybe. I mean, last year it was snowing in Lambeau, I believe it was. So I'm not really concerned about that. Crowd noise is interesting. How does Brock Purdy respond? That's a big question. I feel like the Eagles, you know what they're going to do. They're going to run. They're going to get pressure. They're going to play, they're going to do what they do best. That's what they're going to do. They're going to stick to their game plan. They're going to do what's working. Last week they showed that. The run game was working. They're a very good team at making in-game adjustments. If the run game's working, they're going to run the ball. As for the Niners, it's kind of like, do they run the ball a little bit early on, try to get Purdy comfortable? Because, again, Purdy's had 2 games in his home stadium to start the playoffs. He has not been in a road environment like Philly where they're hostile, they're yelling, it's loud, cold. He hasn't been in an environment like that yet. How does he respond? It'll be interesting to see if the Niners come out early on and try to run a little bit, try to make some short passes just to get him comfortable early on, and that's, use Kittle to your advantage. Again, McCaffrey, short, quick passes, get him comfortable early on. First possession or 2, just get him comfortable, Get them used to, being out there on the road in a playoff game, and we'll see how that plays out. But as for the Eagles, we know what they're going to bring. The Niners are going to have to get off to a quicker start. I truly believe that. Last week, they did not get off to a quick start. It was a slow start. They're going to have to get off to a quick start, and, they're going to have to get off to a quick start. They will. Because last weekend, it was slow. You get off to a slow start against Philly, the Giants, we saw what happened to the Giants. And the Niners are 10 times more talented than the Giants. I don't want to try and compare the Niners and the Giants, but we saw last week, the Giants got off to a slow start. They let Philly go down and score twice right away. You can't let that happen. You can't fall down 10-0, 13, 14-0 on the road in a playoff game. You just can't do it. So, with all that being said, as much as watching last week's game with the Eagles, I feel like deep down inside, I kind of feel like the Eagles are going to win this game. I've said it from the start. Niners, I've picked them to win from the start. I said they're going all the way. I said at the beginning of the playoffs it was going to be Bengals, Niners. I can't go up against the Niners now with them being one game away of my prediction being correct of the Super Bowl. So I'm going to take the Niners here. I think Purdy plays well. I think McCaffrey comes up big. I think they're able to find a way to contain the run game. Part of me also says, look, the Eagles are playing a much more talented team. Much more talented. The Giants last week, they're not talented. They were not talented. Let's just tell it like it is. The Giants are not a very talented team. Go up against a talented team, a good Niners team. Most of these guys have experience playing games on the road. Purdy doesn't, but you hope that the guys around him kind of, ease his mind a little bit and he steps up and makes the throws he needs to make and play like he does. Niners get off to a quick start. Niners, Brock Purdy gets the win. And I got a stat to tell you. So there have been these are the rookie quarterbacks to lead their teams to conference championship games. Sean King did it in 1999 with the Buccaneers. Ben Roethlisberger did it in 2004 with the Steelers. Joe Flacco did it in 2008 with the Ravens. And in our very own Jets, Mark Sanchez did it in 2009 with the New York Jets. Purdy is the fifth quarterback in his rookie year to get to the conference championship game, obviously this season, 2022-2023 season. Now, he's trying to end something, though. All four of those quarterbacks lost those championship games. Sean King and the Buccaneers lost. Steelers lost. Flacco and the Ravens lost. And Mark Sanchez and the Jets lost. So, four quarterbacks, five including Purdy, but he hasn't played yet. The other four quarterbacks to make a conference championship game in their rookie year lost the conference championship game. So Purdy's he adds on to the list, but he's trying to end that drought of rookies being 0-4 in conference championship games, and he looks to do that, and I think he will. I'm going to take the Purdy magic. I'm going to take the Niners. Their defense steps up, contains Miles Sanders and this Eagles run game. Give me the Niners. 27-23 on the road. They get the win. I'll take the over on the over-under of 46. I got the Niners plus 2.5. I'll take the Niners over on the over-under of 46. Niners plus 2.5. They go on the road, get the win, and punch their ticket to Super Bowl 57 in Arizona at State Farm Stadium. I'll take the Niners. Game number 2. AFC Championship, Bengals, Chiefs, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, CBS. Chiefs, a small 1.5-point favorite. Over-under set at 47.5. Chiefs got the win last week. The Chiefs got the win. Bengals won both their games. Chiefs got the win over the Jaguars. I was blanking for a second of who they beat. But the Chiefs got the win over the Jaguars after getting the first round bye. Bengals took care of business barely against Tyler Huntley and the Ravens. And again, there was a lot of questions going into that Bills game for both the Bills and the Bengals. Bills barely beat the Dolphins, led by Skylar Thompson. Miami into a cold weather Buffalo, barely beat them. And then you had Tyler Huntley and the Ravens almost go on the road and get the job done against Cincinnati. So both those teams entered last week with questions, and it was almost like the Chiefs are getting to the play. The Chiefs are getting to the Super Bowl. You felt good about that. Like, not felt good about it, but you felt like after watching Wild Card Weekend and the performances from Cincinnati and Buffalo, you're kind of scratching your head. But then last week, Cincinnati made a massive statement on the road, taking care of business against Buffalo in the snow, on the road. Everything Buffalo had, they had everything to their advantage. It was snowing. They were at home. I mean, everything. They had everything. And the Bengals went in there and ran all over them. Obviously, the big storyline going into this game is the health of Patrick Mahomes. High ankle sprain, injured it last week against Jacksonville. Chad Henne came in and orchestrated a very nice drive for a touchdown, got Kittle in the red zone. So they scored with him. He actually looked good. Would I trust Chad Henne, though, in this game against Cincinnati? No, Cincinnati's better than Jacksonville. But, I mean, the big storyline is Patrick Mahomes' health. And this week, so far, it looks like he's been okay. He's been running a little bit. It doesn't look like he's limping a ton. But again, I think a lot of people are reading into, like they see him walking okay, and everyone's like, okay, Patrick Mahomes is okay. He's walking. He's fine. But my big thing is, how does he react after taking the first hit? Because it's going to happen. He's going to take a hit. Unless if they protect him really well, he's going to take a hit. I mean, the Bengals front is very, very good. They were all over Josh Allen. Deion Dawkins had an awful game, one of the Bills' best offensive linemen. They made him look silly out there. Edge, interior, Bengals have a very good defensive front. And they made Josh Allen's life miserable on last weekend on Sunday. So, how do they protect him? That's what it's going to come down to. If Patrick Mahomes is running for his life, this could be an ugly day. Because again, he might walk okay, but how is it after taking that first hit? How is his ankle on the run, on the move? Cutting up field, making a move, trying to make a guy miss. How is that ankle? That's the big question. It's not 100%. It's way less than that. It's a high ankle sprain. So it'll be interesting to see how the Chiefs approach this. Again, I talk a little about the Niners. Like, do they let Mahomes air it out early on? Do they try and get the run game going a little bit? Do they see, how do the Bengals approach this? Knowing that he's got a hurt ankle, do they blitz? Do they send extra guys? Do they blitz and load the box, stack the box, and, instead of only rushing 4, rush 5 or 6, maybe sending the linebacker safety blitz, corner blitz, something like that, and try to knock him down and get him a little startled early on? Do they try and do that? It'll be interesting to see how both teams manage this. If I had to guess, they're going to let Patrick Mahomes be Patrick Mahomes, and it's going to be the Bengals that are going to have to make the adjustments. It's going to be the Bengals that are going to have to find ways to hit him and take him off his game. I don't think Andy Reid's going to try and alter the offense just because of Patrick Mahomes' ankle, which he was able to play through last week. But it's going to be interesting because if he's taking hits early on and he's banged up, are they going to have to rely on the run? And Isaiah Pacheco last week played a very big role. He's going to have to be a big factor in this game. McKinnon, another guy. Those two running backs, very good in their backfield and very good out of the receiving game. Those two guys are going to play a big role. Because, again, they're not going to want Mahomes to take hits. If he's waiting in the pocket and trying to throw the ball deep, it just with this pass rush and the way they looked against Buffalo, it could make for a long day. So it'll be interesting to see how they utilize the running backs. It'll be interesting to see if the Bengals try and come out and deliver some hits early on, get some pressure early on, get him out of the pocket, get him to where he's running, and having to, put stress on that ankle. It'll be interesting. But, look, as I mentioned, last week, Bengals got all sorts of weapons. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Burrow, Mixon's very good, had a very nice game last weekend. They got weapons all over. It's a repeat of last year. Going on the road, Arrowhead, they know what it takes. The biggest thing to me is once Jamar Chase and Burrow, and it's almost like once they get that connection early on, it's just like a death sentence to the opposing team. And we saw that last week. He orchestrated that beautiful drive, first possession of the game, right off the kickoff, boom, drive downfield, touchdown, Jamar Chase. And it was like right then and there, you knew it was going to be a long day for Buffalo. Similar to Philly. When they get Miles Sanders in that run game going, you know it's going to be a long day. When they get Jalen Hurts running out of the pocket, you know it's going to be a long day. Same thing here with the Bengals. When Jamar Chase and Burrow, and this is why they're so good, it happens almost every game. That's why they were a 12-win team this year. But when him and Burrow get that connection and get that rhythm early on, there's no stopping this offense. That's when they put up 27, 30-plus points. And that's when they're able to just go up and down the field. Doesn't matter if they're on the road. Doesn't matter the weather. They just have that connection and up and down the field, back and forth, back and forth. Defense feeds off of it, and the whole team just clicks. So early on, to me, the Bengals, you look at this game, it's like Bengals come out and score early. And again, if the Chiefs fall down 10-0 early on and Mahomes is limping and not playing not doing what he's usually doing, it could make for a long day. So it's going to be big for the Chiefs to have to find a way to control Jamar Chase, because it's almost like once he scores, it's like a dead sentence. It's like game over, game's done. Burrow and Jamar Chase are like out, Joe Montana and Jerry Rice, game's over. It's the truth though. That's how we saw that last week. Bills never responded, and the Bengals just kept going. So I like the Bengals in this game. I really do. I legitimately, to be honest with you, like if I had to, it's not because of Patrick Mahomes' ankle. I don't think that's not why I'm picking them. I'm picking them because I truly believe in this Bengals team. And I got to admit, I am pleasantly surprised by their defense. I really am. Their defensive line, very, very good. Trey Hendrickson on the edge. Very, very good defensive front. And they are a really, they're just, Sam Hubbard as well on the edge as well. You have Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson. You have a guy like B.J. Hill, DJ Reader, interior. They have a ton of just really good talent. Something that doesn't get talked about often. And I know Eli Apple, I'm not a big fan of him. I don't like Eli Apple at all. I think he talks a ton of trash and he's not any good. But when you look at their defensive front, a lot of people talk about their secondary. Mike Hilton last week actually had a pretty good game for them. A lot of people talk about their secondary, talking about, Von Bell, Jesse Bates, and rightfully so. Those guys are all very good players and key pieces to their team. Don't get me wrong. But to me, I think the biggest piece of their defense is the defensive front, especially last week. I mean, they were getting pressure all over. They got pressure all over Allen last week. It felt like every play was running for his life. And they couldn't get the run game going either. And again, if Mahomes' ankle's banged up and they can't get the run game going, it could make for a long day. So I'm going to take Cincinnati here, back-to-back years, over Kansas City. Give me the Bengals on the road, the two road warriors this weekend for the Bengals and the Niners. I'll take the Bengals, 31-24, Bengals by a touchdown. Bengals over on the over-under 47.5. Bengals plus 1.5. Cincy on the road. And the Niners and the Bengals in Super Bowl 57 in Arizona is my pick. I've stuck with it from the start, and I'm going to stick with it here. And then once we get to the Super Bowl, I might have to make an adjustment depending on how things go. Because I said the Niners are going to win it all. But if the Bengals come out and put up like 35 points and win, and the Niners barely squeak past Philly, edge might go to the Cincinnati. But we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. So, Niners, Bengals. I got moving on. And hopefully, all I ask is just a good weekend of football. That's all I ask. I just want a good weekend of football. Two good games. Let's see last weekend, we didn't really see any of those. I want to see I want to see a game, 1 minute left, like Purdy or, I don't know, Mahomes, 1 minute left, timeout, down a touchdown, on his own 20, see if he can go down, 80 yards in a minute with a timeout and score and tie the game and send it to overtime. I would like to see something like that. I want to see two really good games. And I think we're getting two really good games. I really do. I have my concerns with the Niners because I do fear that if the Eagles can get their run game going, it could make for a long day. And I truly believe that if their run game plays like they did last week, I think they're going on to win it all. I don't think anybody's going to be able to beat them. That's just me. But we'll see. We'll see. Hoping for a good weekend of football. Niners, Bengals are my two picks. All right, so now we move on here and talk a little off-season as the NFL off-season for all teams, all 28 teams except 4, is in full swing right now. After the divisional round weekend, both New York football teams find themselves back in the off-season. I guess if you want to call it back where they belong, because for a while now, they have not been playing football late January. They haven't been. But the Giants got January football. The Jets did not. And hopefully next year the Jets end that playoff drought of 12 straight years. But the Jets yesterday hired offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett. They found their new offensive coordinator after they fired Mike LaFleur, who, by the way, is the offensive coordinator now in LA. So he's now with the Rams, and I don't want people to read too much into that because McVay calls the plays. So it's an opportunity for LaFleur to earn a little bit more experience, kind of rebuild his reputation around the league, and go from there. A lot of people out there like, oh, the Rams picked up Mike LaFleur, Jets made a bad move firing him. No. LaFleur there is going to be the coordinator, but McVay's going to call the plays, and he's going to have most of the say. But it is an opportunity for LaFleur, if that offense has success, to learn a little bit more and maybe down the road here become another offense coordinator, then down the road coaching or whatever. He's still very young. He's still got a lot of time left in his career, but it's kind of an opportunity for him to learn a little bit and then down the road be back to that full-time play caller, head coach role wherever he finds himself down the road. But the Jets yesterday hired Nathaniel Hackett, and so the offense coordinator search is over. And look, I'll start off with this. I like the move. I think it's a good hire for the Jets. We talked about at the beginning of this search, we talked about experience, right? And the Jets get that here with Hackett. He was an offensive coordinator in Buffalo. He was the offensive coordinator in Jacksonville. He was the offensive coordinator in Green Bay with Rodgers, which is why all of us Jet fans now are talking about Rodgers coming here and the connections with him and Rodgers in Green Bay, and they were close, and he was there for 3 years and all that good stuff. I just want to say this, though. I understand fans' I guess, level of concern, a little worried with the way things went in Denver. But I want to say this, and I want to make this clear. I'm personally not concerned at all what he did in Denver, and I'll tell you why. Sometimes really good coordinators are just bad head coaches. And we've seen that a lot in the league, where guys are really good offensive coordinators, really good defensive coordinators. They go to head coach, and they're not very good, and they're really bad. And he went 4-11, and he got fired. And Denver was a train wreck this year, and it was an absolute mess. I mean, it was awful. I mean, they went into the year with possibility of competing for the AFC West, and they were dead last at the end of the year. They finished 5-12. So it was a mess, right? But as for, we've seen this too. Like Todd Bowles is another prime example of this. Very good coordinator, not a good head coach, and we saw that with our own eyes. We saw the wrong end of it. We didn't see the coordinator side of it. We saw the head coach side of it. But he went to Tampa. He was good in Arizona. Then he went to Tampa. Came here, was awful. He had that one good year, but wasn't very good the next three. And then he went to Tampa, got that defense into top 5, and now he's the head coach and not very good. But again, very good coordinator, not good head coach. Nathaniel Hackett, very good coordinator, not a good head coach. And he's got experience in coordinating too. I'm not just saying he's a very good coordinator because he's been an offensive coordinator at 3 different teams and he's got experience. He took Blake Bortles in 2018 to the AFC Championship game. He took Blake Bortles. Let me say that again. Blake Bortles to the AFC Championship game, took him into New England, and they almost won. Him and Rodgers had a very good relationship. Rodgers had a lot to do with the success, don't get me wrong, but you saw what happened. Hackett was removed, so was Devontae Adams, so that was part of it. And I'm not saying the reason Nathaniel Hackett was removed is the reason why the Packers missed the playoffs and Rodgers had a little bit of a down year statistically. A lot of it had to do with Devontae Adams not being there. A lot of it had to do with Christian Watson and Allen Lazard being the top 2 receivers, Watson being a rookie, and there being a little bit of a growing pains early on, but started to get better as the season went on. That had to do a lot of it. But some of it, you could say, had to do with Hackett leaving. There could be a little bit there of it be with Hackett. Because early on, they were some struggles, and you could tell Rodgers was frustrated sometimes with a couple of the play calls, and Hackett could have been a little bit more of an easing voice for Rodgers. And sometimes you see that. Now, I like this hire. My only concern is what I'm going to bring up now. I know his father was with the Jets, and he was, under Herm Edwards, and I believe he was there for 3 years, and I don't, again, younger generation Jet fan, I was not around for the Herm Edwards days. But I know a lot of people not a big fan of his father when he was here. I don't really, again, maybe it's because I haven't watched it, and I don't remember those, I wasn't alive during those days. Maybe that's part of it. If you would have told me Adam Gaze's, dad for Adam Gaze's, son, when Adam Gase gets older, if his son took an offensive coordinator job here, maybe I would be concerned because Adam Gase was here at one time. So I get maybe part of it, Where, like, his dad wasn't very good, so are you concerned a little bit about the son? I get it, but he's had success elsewhere. Like, he has a track record. Is he the greatest offensive mind ever? No. Look, again, you could make the argument, okay, he took Bortles there that 1 year, but outside of that, he had Aaron Rodgers. There's not a ton you got to do to get Rodgers to play well because he's just really good. You can make that argument. But when you look at the other candidates, what guy did you really want? Frank Reich, unrealistic. When you see that he's the head coach now, he was clearly, his focus was on head coaching, not on offensive coordinator. Gary Kubiak, his name popped up sometimes, never going to happen. And Monken in Georgia was never going to happen. Those are like the three dream best candidates. We knew that wasn't going to happen. The other most experienced guy was probably Darrell Bevell, who has experience, was an interim coach twice in Detroit after they fired Patricia, and then was there in Jacksonville last year after they fired Urban Meyer. He was also the coordinator and stuff like that, and, with Miami and stuff like that. So he had experience, but he decided to not take offensive coordinator's jobs. So the list got shorter and shorter, and it was clear that the guy with the most experience was Hackett. My biggest message to Jets fans, and if we're sitting, this time, if again this time next season, we're talking about looking for a new coordinator, looking for a new head coach, I'll be wrong, and I'll admit it. But I want to make this clear. I would not be so concerned with how it went down in Denver. I really wouldn't be that concerned because we've seen this before. It's almost like college coaches, like Nick Saban, or any of these coaches, like Nick Saban, for example. If he came to the NFL right now, and if he was really bad, would you shy away from hiring him to be a college coach again? And I don't want to sound like I'm comparing Nathaniel Hackett and Nick Saban, but it's a similar situation. Like a really good, like Urban Meyer, we saw it. Really good college coach, went to the NFL, was a disaster. Matt Rule, very good college coach, NFL disaster. We'll see what he does now in Nebraska. Todd Bowles, really good quarterback, or really good coordinator, not quarterback, really good coordinator, very bad head coach. So we've seen this. So that I'm not concerned about. It was the right hire. It was really the only hire. Like, they couldn't sign the tight ends coach of New England. You couldn't do that. You had to bring in a guy with experience, and they get that. My only thing is I hope that the Jets are doing this. Because this is similar now with Aaron Rodgers' now name being popped up. And by all means, go out and get Rodgers. We all want that, obviously. But I hope that the Jets hired Hackett because he was truly the guy that they felt was best for the job. Us as fans feel it, but we didn't interview. We didn't interview the guys. So truly, are the Jets, because I think this is where it went wrong in Denver. I think, and again, I don't have any insider information. I'm just the guy that sits here, talks in front of a microphone, and gives you guys my opinion. I don't have any insider information, especially with the Denver Broncos, right? But I get this feeling that Denver, again, just my feeling, but I get this feeling that Denver hired Hackett just because they felt it would bring Aaron Rodgers to Denver. Sure enough, it didn't. They bring in Russell Wilson. Hackett really wasn't the best guy for the job. It was a disaster. So I hope that the Jets aren't just doing this just because they think automatically Rodgers is going to come here. I hope that they did this because he was truly the best candidate, number one. And also, it could also be to bring Rodgers here. But I hope it's also because he was the best candidate. I hope this wasn't just Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh and them saying, you know what? He'll probably give us the best chance to get Rodgers. Go get him. Because if you don't get Rodgers, then is he really that good? That's my only concern. And I don't think they did that, but you do get that question. Now, does this automatically mean Rodgers is coming here? No, I don't think so. Look, we thought the same thing last year when they hired Hackett. I don't want to be Debbie Downer. Could it definitely mean? Yes, it could. But we'll see, obviously, how it all plays out. I want to say this too to Jets fans. Like, I get Rodgers is a big name. We all want him. He's obviously the number one option out there for a lot of Jets fans. And I get that, believe me. But a lot of Jet fans right now are like not seeing through Aaron Rodgers. It's like it's Rodgers or nothing. Like if you don't get Aaron Rodgers, it's a disaster. And I don't necessarily believe that. Like I don't think Derek Carr would be a bad option. Like if you get Derek Carr it's not bad. Like last week, we were all talking about Lamar Jackson coming here. 2 weeks ago it was Lamar Jackson or bust. For a couple days there, it was, get Tom Brady. Now it's Aaron Rodgers. But now, like, Jets fans are not seeing any other guy out there. It's not like it's Aaron Rodgers or Gardner Minshew. It's Aaron Rodgers, or you could get Derek Carr, which isn't bad. It isn't terrible. Would I want Aaron Rodgers? Again, we all do. We want the Jets to go out and get him. But there's a lot of, like, there's this feeling right now that if the Jets don't get Rodgers, it's a fail. Now, if they don't get Rodgers and they end up with Baker Mayfield, then it's a fail. But if they don't get Rodgers and they end up with Derek Carr, that's not the end of the world. Derek Carr is good. And I've talked about this a lot. Derek Carr, it was a disaster in Vegas. They gave him nothing. They gave him Gruden, or John Gruden was awful. Had those email issues, off-the-field issues. They gave him no draft picks. Ton of off-the-field issues with the whole Henry Ruggs situation. John Gruden, Gruden got fired, and then they brought in, interim head coach Bisaccia, who was good, and then they let him go in the offseason so they could bring in McDaniels, who was a train wreck. It was awful. They didn't give him anything. They also never gave him a good defense. You give Carr weapons, you give Carr defense, he could be a really good quarterback. So I don't want this to turn into a bring Derek. Look, Rodgers obviously option one. But there's this feeling now that, like, we have to have Rodgers. If we don't have Rodgers, it's awful. No, I wouldn't necessarily say that. I wouldn't. Again, if we're talking about two quarterbacks left, and it was Rodgers, Mayfield, then it would be Rodgers or bust, because Baker Mayfield stinks. But Rodgers or Derek Carr, sure, Rodgers is really good. Don't get me wrong, and you'd be a. I think the Jets right now have the 8th best odds to win the Super Bowl next season, which is because Hackett's coming here and they believe Rodgers is going to come here as well. But I wouldn't necessarily just say it's Rodgers or nothing now. Like, it's not like it's not like, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But I don't get this feeling that Rodgers has to come here or else it's a fail. But that goes back to my point that if this was a hire to bring in Rodgers, you better get him. That's my point. It's a bust if the Jets if the Jets hired Hackett just to bring in Rodgers. Because you saw what happened in Denver, where I think they hired him to bring in Rodgers. They didn't, and it wasn't good. So, we'll see. But I like the hire, and we hope Rodgers is coming here as well, but we'll see how it all plays out. I just want to try and calm Jet fans down, because right now it feels like Rodgers is the only guy in the world that the Jets should get. Like, if they don't end up, look, the Packers might not trade him. Like, Rodgers might say, hey, I'll stay. Or he retires. I don't think he'll retire, but we don't know what's going to happen with Rodgers. There might not even a chance to get him. He might stay with the Packers. But we'll see. It definitely gives us a better chance. And I'll tell you this. Connor Hughes made a great point yesterday. Hackett wouldn't accept this job after a disaster in Denver. He's trying to redeem himself, He's trying to redeem himself. He's trying to put a better picture out there for the rest of the league. It was a mess in Denver. If he can come to the Jets and rebuild this offense, his reputation will be, built back up. So he's got to come in here knowing he's going to get a quarterback. He's not going to come in here, accept this job with the head coach and the GM on the hot seat just so then he can work with Zach Wilson, or just so then the Jets can sign Gardner Minshew. You've got to, with this hire, with everything on the line, and with Hackett wanting to restore his reputation around the NFL, that gives you that sense of he's got to know, and the Jets got to realize, a big-name quarterback's coming. And I do get that feeling. And we'll see how it all plays out. So, Jets get Hackett. I like it. And does this lead to Rodgers? We will see. All right. The other hire yesterday, which is what I want to get into here before we close things out, was Frank Reich, as the Carolina Panthers hired Frank Reich as their head coach. And look, I want to make this clear. Frank Reich is a well-respected veteran offensive coordinator and offensive mind. Well-respected coach around the NFL. Good guy, all that good stuff. What I'm about to say is not anything a shot at Frank Reich. It's more of a shot at the Panthers and the way that they handled the this situation let me just, get my notes up here. The way they handled the Steve Wilks situation. Because Steve Wilks did a very good job. And I want to make this clear about Frank Reich. Again, this isn't like Frank. I don't think it's completely fair to Frank Reich to say, "Oh, this is a bad hire. Like, this is a really bad hire." I wouldn't necessarily say it's a bad hire. Is it a home run? I think it's 50-50 because look, Frank Reich was in Indy for 4+ years. Obviously, last year got fired. They hired Jeff Saturday. It was a train wreck. In those 4.5 years, last 4+ years, he made two playoffs. Lost in a divisional round in 2018. Lost the wild card round in 2020. But when you look at Frank Reich, he had a different quarterback every year. 2018, it was Andrew Luck. 2019, it was Jacoby Brissett. 2020, it was Phillip Rivers. 2021, it was Carson Wentz. Last year was Matt Ryan. And especially the last 3 years, it's been ugly. Rivers, final year in the NFL. Wentz, not the same player he once was. Matt Ryan's not even close to the player he once was. Right? Luck was at the last year of his career. We all know what Jacoby Brissett is. He's an quarterback. He's a good backup, not a good starter. And he had to start that year. That's what he was working with. So again, this isn't, what I'm about to say isn't so much a shot at Frank Reich. It's not that I hate the hire. It's not like they brought in Adam Gase. Frank Reich's, again, well-respected, been around the league for a while. He got the Colts to 2 playoffs in 4+ years. Not many coaches could do that when you have he had a different quarterback every year, like he did. Different quarterback every year. Andrew Luck, Jacoby Brissett, Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan. And the last 2 are really bad. Carson Wentz blew that game last week of the season last year against the Jaguars that would have got them to the playoffs. And then this year, Matt Ryan was awful. And they really didn't give him any weapons either, and that's a part of Jimmy Irsay in the front office, which isn't any good. And then they fired Frank Reich and brought in Jeff Saturday, and he wasn't any good either, and that's why they finished 4-12-1 and on like a 6-game losing streak to end the year or whatever it was. It was something crazy. He won the first game against the Raiders and lost every other game after that. So it's not so much that I don't like Frank Reich. Again, I mean, anything really is an upgrade over Matt Rule. I mean, they could have hired Todd Bowles, and that's an upgrade over Matt Rule. They could have hired Nathaniel Hackett. That'd be an upgrade over Matt Rule. Matt Rule's awful. Matt Rule was an example of a guy, again, as I mentioned, talking about Hackett and coordinators and coaches. He was a guy, a really good college coach in Baylor, turned that program around, came to the NFL, was not any good. He's back in Nebraska. We'll see if he can turn that program around, obviously, after the couple really bad years with Scott Frost. So we'll see what he can do there. He'll be truly added to the list of failed NFL coaches, really good college coaches, if he turns Nebraska back around and he gets them to where Baylor was, which is like a top 10 team in the nation. If he does that, he'll be truly added to the list of you stay in college, really bad in the NFL, very good in college. So they get the hire there. Who knows what their quarterback is? There's a lot of questions when you look at Carolina. Darnold showed you some things. You got rid of Mayfield middle of the year. Could Darnold be the guy? Does Frank Reich want to work with him? Does Frank Reich want to draft a guy and just say, I'm tired of... Because you don't know with Darnold. Like, you could go into this year with Sam Darnold and say, okay, let's see what he can do. And then next year you're working with another quarterback. And then that's 6 years where Frank Reich will have a different quarterback. Frank Reich might want to come in and just say, look, I am tired of every year having a different quarterback. Give me C.J. Stroud. Let me draft the guy. Let me develop him. And let's do this thing the right way. Let's not take the risk of Sam Darnold, him not having a good year, and then next year having to look at another quarterback. Because then that would be basically 6 years for Frank Reich of having a different quarterback each season. And we know as well as Jets fans, it's hard to have success when you don't have a quarterback. Hard to have success as a head coach when you don't have a quarterback, especially when you're bounced between 2 franchises. So it'll be interesting to see how the Panthers approach this. But Steve Wilks was a name that kind of just got lost in the mix. And again, not about Frank Reich, more so about this front office just avoiding the fact that Steve Wilks did everything he was asked of and still didn't get the job. So the Panthers fired Matt Rule when they were 1-4. They were 1-4. They had that awful game. I think it was against the Niners where they got smoked, and they fired Matt Rule. They were low. They were awful. They were the worst team in football. They were even worse than the Texans. They were embarrassing. They didn't even have really a quarterback. It was a mess. They fire Matt Rule. Now, they put Steve Wilks as the interim. And what he was asked as the interim head coach, he was asked to be competitive, get the team to where they're competitive. You're 1-4 right now. If you can get the team, if you can win, go 4-8, in your last 12 games, you like where you're at, right? Well, Steve Wilks exceeded basically all the expectations. He probably did more than what they even wanted. They started out 1-4. To put this into perspective, the Panthers started out 1-4. The Jets started out 3-2. The Jets started out 7-4, 6-3. The Jets finished 7-10. The Carolina Panthers, they finished 7-10. Steve Wilks took a team that was an absolute mess. No quarterback. Locker room was all over. They traded away Christian McCaffrey, that too. Who knows what happens if they still had McCaffrey. They trade away McCaffrey, and he gets the team. He goes 6-6 and gets the team to 7-10. And by the way, going into Week 17, the second to last week of the season, they were playing meaningful games. They controlled their own destiny. And to not give him really a fair or another opportunity to come back and continue to build on what he built last year is not fair at all. It seemed like he got the most, and it seemed like Darnold really started to play well. He started to really trust the players on the rosters. Guys like Dante Foreman started to step up in a big way at the running back position. They were playing really good football. They beat the Bucs. Some of their wins took care of business against the Bucs. Took care of business against the Seahawks on the road. And oh yeah, they took care of business against, at the time, was the hottest team in football, the Detroit Lions, and they had 2 running backs run over 100 yards in that game. 3 of those wins were just some of the victories Steve Wilks had. The team was 1-4. He goes 6-6, gets them to 7-10. They controlled their own destiny. They needed to beat Tampa. They needed to beat New Orleans. They would have won the NFC South, and they would have had a playoff game against the Cowboys. They would have hosted a playoff game. Instead, they ended up losing the Buccaneers. They still beat the Saints the last week of the season, and sure enough, they missed the playoffs. But for a team that started out 1-4, to have a chance at the playoffs the last 2 weeks of the season was unbelievable. And Steve Wilks didn't get the right opportunity. So that, to me, is ridiculous. And again, they traded away Christian McCaffrey. They traded away their best player. And he still found a way to get that team to 6-6. The least the Panthers could have done was bring him back for 1 year and say, hey, look, you showed us 12 games last year. You got the team back playing. They bought into whatever you were preaching. Let's see what you can do this whole season. If it collapses and you win 4 games this year, you're out. Kind of a 1-year prove-it deal where 12 games, we liked it. It was kind of like what do you want to call it? What do they do with movie? The trailer? That was kind of like the trailer. Now give us the movie. You got 1 year. Do it. Go out there. If you win 7 games this season, team plays well, and then you're ready to make that big next step, you'll be our coach. If you go out and we win 3 games, you're out of here. They could at least have done that. Instead, the guy that the players started to buy into, the locker room was clearly believing in him. He clearly got the most out of players. Now you're just going to get him, not give him a fair chance. Bring in Frank Reich, who, again, got fired middle of the year last year. I talk about the quarterbacks, and again, I'm not trying to crush Frank Reich here, but he got fired. It is what it is. We could talk, and I talked about the quarterbacks, but he got fired in the middle of the year last year. It is what it is. There's no sugarcoating that. So now he takes over a Panthers franchise where there's no direction, but there's real no direction at quarterback. You like your weapons. I mean, DJ Moore's pretty good. Defensively, they're okay. We'll see where they go with Darnold. But again, I mean, I think this is kind of a Wilkes isn't a very big name. Let's go out and get the biggest name possible. It was Frank Reich. Sean Payton was never going there. But it's like, look, if they got Sean Payton, you'd be like, okay, I understand. Of course you're going to take Sean Payton over Steve Wilkes, right? You're going to take Sean Payton over half the coaches in the league probably, But Frank Reich, again, he's good. In his career, regular season record, he's 40-33-1. That's 547 win percentage. He's got a postseason record of 1-2. That's 333. And he's got a career record of 41-35-1. That's 539 win percentage. Again, he's good. He's an above 500 career head coaching record. I'm not denying that. But Steve Wilkes, you could maybe say, was better. And he did a lot with a little. He did. I mean, if you really want to go down this road, and again, I'm on the side of backing up Frank Reich. He didn't have the quarterback. I get that. But did Steve Wilkes have much either? He took over a dumpster fire. Frank Reich let it get into a dumpster fire. Steve Wilkes took over one. And he got the fire calmed down. He got them, went 6-6, got them to play meaningful games. They went into Tampa controlling their destiny to the NFC South. They had an opportunity. They almost won that game too. They were competitive in that game. To go on the road and be competitive against Tom Brady, I don't care where he is in his career. To be able to do that and to not really get a fair chance is a bad look for the Carolina Panthers. And I'll tell you what, Steve Wilkes' name is definitely an interesting one to keep an eye out around the league because he definitely got some attention. He took a team that was a mess, not much talent, and got them to believe and got them playing their best football. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him, but an interesting hire for sure. And I was kind of shocked to see the news. Not so much shocked to see that Steve Wilkes wasn't coming back, but I was more shocked to see Frank Reich got the job. I thought Frank Reich might want to take a year. I also thought I didn't think a team would want to take him as a head coach. With the way it ended in Indy, again, I know he didn't have the quarterback, but I didn't think a team would want to take him in. I think this kind of tells us that Panthers are probably going to draft the quarterback because I don't see a world where the Panthers are going to roll with Darnold. And that's nothing against do with Darnold. This is more, does Frank Reich want to risk Darnold going out there having a bad year and then next year you got to get another quarterback? Or does he just want, bring in a guy, let him develop him, let him have his own guy, and go from there, which Indy never did. It'll be interesting. But Frank Reich, out of the middle of nowhere, new head coach for the Carolina Panthers. And Steve Wilkes is not, and definitely some questions surrounding the Carolina Panthers and this decision. All right. So as for the rest of the sports going on this weekend, we got 5 games tonight in the NBA. You got Bucks, Pacers, Grizzlies, Timberwolves, Thunder, Cavs, Heat, Magic, Raptors, Warriors. Knicks, Nets both got the night off. They will be playing against each other tomorrow at Barclays in Brooklyn, so look forward to that. As for the NHL, got a good amount of games on tonight. You got the Panthers, Kings, Islanders at home against the Red Wings. Maple Leafs, Senators, Sharks, Hurricanes, Devils, Stars, Blue Jackets, Canucks, Flames, Kraken. And the Rangers will host Vegas tonight at MSG. One more game before the All-Star break, which is coming up after this game. Next game for the Rangers will be on February 6th. They will host the Flames that Monday. So the Rangers look to end the first half of the season, or if you want to call it. I know games-wise they're over the first half of the season in terms of number of games, but first half before the All-Star break on a high note after a tough loss on Tuesday or Wednesday against the the Maple Leafs in overtime. They'll look to bounce back tonight in Vegas. And Kentucky has a massive game tomorrow at home, hosting Kansas at home, number 9th ranked Kansas and 9th ranked team in the nation. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern. Rupp Arena better be going crazy tomorrow. Kentucky got the win on Tuesday over Vandy. You get 3 days off. Massive game against Kansas. You get the win there. And since that loss to South Carolina, that will be 4 straight wins over Tennessee, Georgia, Texas A&M, Vanderbilt. Actually, 5 straight wins. And Kentucky will definitely probably be ranked again. And you kind of look back at that South Carolina game and you look at it and say that could be a turning point in the season. Losing by 3 against South Carolina at home, that could be the turning point. And to get a win against Kansas tomorrow would be huge. That would be 2 top 10 victories on the year. Pick up your 14th win of the season or 15th win of the season. Get to 15-6. You really start to feel good about where you're at then. So massive game tomorrow for Kentucky. Like tomorrow would be one of those games where you're at home, get a win there. You really put yourself back on the map. It's like Kentucky's back then. Tennessee was a really big win. Don't get me wrong. Vandy was nice, but if you can get another big win, it's like that's 2 top 10 victories, 5-game win streak. 2 of those games have been top 10 wins. You really are like, they're back to rank. They're back. They're playing their best basketball of the season. So big game tomorrow at home. Took care of business last year against Kansas at Allen Fieldhouse on the road. See if they can do it again this year, this time at home. Hopefully they can. And then on Sunday, you got 2 games. Eagles, Niners, 3 Eastern, Fox, CBS, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, Bengals, Chiefs. By the way, Jeff McNeil, 4-year, $50 million extension. So Mets, actually, it's a pretty good deal. Bats, 326, 4 years, $50 million. I will. Actually, I think that's pretty good. I was expecting a little bit more. John Heyman tweets out that it could max out to $63.75 million. I guess if he reaches certain options, it is a 5th-year option. So 4 years, 5th-year option. And I'm actually recording a Bubbs Talking Baseball podcast here in a little bit. We'll end this, get this uploaded, record that in a little bit. We'll be talking Yankees left field, a little bit of Cashman's comments on Hicks, little David Peralta rumors. I'll be talking new prospect list came out the other day. Little Volpe, talk about Dominguez, talk about the Yankees prospects, talk a little about the Orioles and their prospects. And then I'm going to talk about McNeil now. I was going to talk about Scott Rowland, but talk about McNeil now. So 3 topics there. Stay tuned. I'll have that uploaded here in a little while. I'll be recording that here soon. So stay tuned. A lot more content coming. Everybody enjoy your weekend. As always, hope you enjoyed it. I will see you all back here on Monday. Enjoy your weekend. As always, hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.